Alright guys, so what's up? I guess this is going to be episode 2 coming in on the BMW K-Series swap. So I kind of just wanted to go over the engine I picked up, what I'm going to do, how we're going to get it in the car. So stick around. So I guess the first question is, everybody wants to know, what engine did you go with? Because that's kind of important. I was, because this is the thing. We already have, Acura perfection, Suzuki perfection, Toyota perfection. I mean, this is the best of the best JDM stuff we have here. And now, since, I'm a BMW fanboy, I got to start getting, the BMW t-shirts, the hats, I'm now up here. I'm a BMW fanboy now. So now I'm better than all of, all these kids. So I was going to do a K24 swap. Looked at it, thought about it, but at the same time, I mean, peasants drive K24s. Don't those come out of like Accords and like CRVs? Ugh, who want to get that motor? Then I thought about it, I was like, well, I can do a the SI swap, Civic SI swap. I mean, that's K20, cool. But then I also thought, like, who drives SIs? I mean, like, don't high school kids drive Civic SIs? Ugh, who wants that either? So, being that I'm a BMW fanboy now, we had to get the cream of the crop. The best Honda engine ever designed, the K20 Type R. So that is what we are going to put in here, K20 Type R into the BMW, because that is the best Honda engine that's out. And even to prove to you, yes, it is a real Type R. See that? K20A, real Type R. So, all right, I guess now on to the good stuff. Our first problem, as you can see, the manifold is facing the wrong way because your firewall is probably here. So now we got to get, I had this actually for a couple years now, just testing it on random cars, but we got the Skunk 2 plenum manifold. It's reversible, so I'm going to try to put the throttle body on this side and see how that works. So that's going to be step 1 to see how that works. 2, also, I got to figure out a pulley setup because that's also something I wanted to go over with you guys because that's kind of important. Is the 2 things you kind of really need to pay attention to when you're doing a rear wheel drive K20 is probably your manifold setup, your pulley setup, because exhaust setup, you're probably just going to run it out of the back. That's not too difficult, but this information is kind of good. So let's go over that real quick. So we got the manifold on facing the wrong way. And I kind of want to go over a belt setup type intake throttle body setup for the rear wheel drive K-Series cars, because this is kind of, normally the throttle body is way over there, so you can kind of just leave all this stuff stock. But now, since your throttle body is up here, you can't really leave this stuff stock. So these are kind of 2 setups you can do. I know everybody runs like a K-Tune the alternator relocation kit, but those are junk and they don't work, so we're not even going to talk about that. So this is a Skunk 2 manifold. Flipped backwards, flipped the wrong way. Now, you have to run the alternator. The alternator goes in this location. K-Miata sells a pulley kit that, don't quote me on this, but I think the pulley goes right here. So you would come around your crank, over the pulley, over the alternator, around the water pump, and go back around the crank. That will clear this, because the pulley's up here, you come around, your throttle body still can come out, you're good. That kit will work with this. The only downside to that kit, though, is it does not have an auto tensioner like the factory setup. And I haven't heard people having problems with it, but I would like to keep the OEM setup with this, because here's our problem now. If you want to run your K20 oil cooler, because there's going to be a line that goes from here to here. If there's a pulley up here, there's probably going to be a belt right here. So you're not going to be able to connect this nipple to this. Now, way around that, you could just tack weld on an AN fitting here, cut that off, weld on an AN fitting here, and then just build your AN line to come out and go around the belt. So that's possible. You can run that setup, keep the oil cooler and everything, which I'd like to keep the oil cooler on the back. So that might be a plausible setup. So Miata sells the belt. I think it's a bearing right here. Belt goes like that. The other way, you run the factory auto tensioner that comes on this motor. Alternator still stays in the same position, and then you run, I think, the Civic Si idler pulley at the top. But the only problem with that setup is the belt runs like right in front of your throttle body, and you can't run the manifold like that. So that's the way I kind of want to do it, because then the belt doesn't interfere with this. So I can just keep my factory tube. I can run the factory auto tensioner, the Civic Si pulley. Everything will bolt up fine. The only problem is, and that's the exact same setup we have in this car too, is the factory Honda setup, so I can keep everything OEM and keep the OEM reliability. The only problem is this manifold will not work. You have to either run Miata's intake manifold, which sits, I think the throttle body sits up here or something, or we might just build our own. That might be another solution, is we'll just build our own intake manifold, because I don't know how the fitment is going to be up here with the strut tower and the suspension. So that's also just a quick tips of how you need to set up the front of this. I haven't even put this in the car yet, so we'll see when we get it in the car, but those are really my only two options. I already have this, so I was going to try to use this, but if I can't, I'll just just throw it back on the spare engine it came off of, and we'll just go build our own manifold. So let's move on to the next part. Also, another important thing that obviously we need to get together is how to mount this onto this. That's also what we got to figure out. And two, I got this, if you guys don't know, this adapter plate from Miata. Two, another thing, I don't even know what transmission this is. This is a funny thing right here, because as you can see, somebody wrote E46 and crossed it out and wrote E36. I brought this transmission at night from somebody, and I just was like, oh, here's the money. So I hope this is the right trans. But the good thing is our adapter plate is built for a E36 and an E46. So I guess let's go ahead and get this on this, and let's get it on this. All right, engine and transmission and drivetrain out. JDM car outside. Adapter plate is on. I will say this piece is like the machining work on this. Good job, guys. Like all the bolts line up perfect. Everything, just the fitment of everything. Like for something like this, it has to be machine perfect. You can't have it off. You can't have it slightly. It's not going to work. It's got to be machine perfect. It is machine perfect. I will say this though. As much money as this costs, next time, guys, could you put a little piece of paper in here that says these bolts go in this direction? That might help some people out that don't know what they're doing. Just a tip. But went to put the adapter plate on. As you can see, this little notch on the head does not allow this thing to sit flush. So what we're going to have to do is grind this off, grind that one off, and then we can probably put our plate on and then throw on our transmission. All right, so guess I'll grind that off and we'll keep rolling. So did some cutting, trimming with the angle grinder. Got that cut down good. Got that cut down good. So we are A-OK, fitting great. And this thing's sturdy too. Like, just, I'm telling you guys, like the machine work on this, it's really good. Like everything fits how it's supposed to fit. It's sturdy. The only thing is, will this hold 1,000 horsepower? That's a question for you guys. I don't know. I have to call them and say, hey, does this rate it for like 1,000? What's the most horsepower you guys push through this thing? But I guess we'll see. So, all right, let's toss this transmission on and let's see if it fits. Side note, also, the bolts with the holes, if you're watching this video for a DIY later, the bolts with the holes go on the transmission. The bolts with the heads, the hex heads, I mean, not the hex heads, the regular heads, these go on this. So you use the bolts that come in the bag, not these bolts, but the other bolts to bolt this on, and then you use these bolts to bolt the transmission on. So, fun fact. And we got it. K-Series on BMW transmission. We are connected. Got our shifter in, we out here banging gears, pow, pow. 1,000 horsepower BMW, right? So got it done. It does fit great. We do have our BMW connected to our Type R. That's what I'm talking about here. So, yeah, another thing I did see, this is probably going to be an issue. Because this is running like into the firewall. Cause I think the firewall might be like here. So we're probably going to have to take that off and do something with that, because the normal K series, you come out and you go to your radiator right here. But this radiator will be up there. So I'm probably got to do something to get the coolant back up front. But other than that, transmission's on, looks good. Shout out to K Miata. Fits great, no question. No, had no problems getting it on. The only problem was just trimming this a little bit down. But other than that, let's go ahead and drop this bad boy down and get it in.